Baby, you a song. You make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise. Hey, baby. Yeah, when I first saw that bikini top on her, she's popping right out of the South Georgia water. Thought, oh, good Lord, she had them long tan legs, couldn't help myself, so I walked up and said, well, baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise down a back road, blowing stop signs through the middle every little farm town with you in this brand new Chevy with a lift kit. Would look a hell of a lot better with you up in there. So baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise. Yeah, she was sipping on Southern and singing Marshall Tucker. We were falling in love in the sweetheart of summer. She hopped right up into the cab of my truck and said, fire it up, let's go get this thing stuck. Baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise down a back road, blowing stop signs through the middle every little farm town with you in this brand new Chevy with a lift kit. Would look a hell of a lot better with you up in there. So baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise. When that summer sun fell to its knees, I looked at her and she looked at me. Then I turned on those KC lights and drove all night, 'cause it felt so right. Her and I, man, we feel so right. I put it in park and grabbed my guitar and strummed a couple chords and sang from the heart. Girl, you sure got the beat in my chest bumping. Hell, I can't get you out of my head. Baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise down a back road, blowing stop signs through the middle every little farm town with you. Well, baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise down a back road, blowing stop signs through the middle every little farm town with you in this brand new Chevy with a lift kit. Look a hell of a lot better with you up in it. Come on, baby, you a song, you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise. Come on, girl, get those windows down and cruise. Oh, yeah.
There's a spot in my driveway where you can park your car. I know a place off the highway where there's a sky full of stars. It ain't far. Got a bottle of red wine, just waiting for the right night, the right girl, the right time. Sounds good, don't it? Well, it's got your name on it, if you want it. Every day I got left, every dollar in my pocket, that shotgun side of my F-150. Girl, you know I want you in it every minute. Got a front porch seat for you, girl, if you can swing it. My start, my end, my heart in my hand. You can have it right now if you want it. It's got your name on it. Got a little space on the right side of this king-size bed, and there's 3 little words I ain't never said yet. I spell it out in a tattoo on my arm just for you, right there in plain view. for every mile right now. If you like how that sounds, you might as well own it. 'Cause it's got your name on it, if you want it. Every day I got left, every dollar in my pocket. That shotgun side of my F-150. Girl, you know I want you in it, every minute. Got a front porch seat for you, girl. If you can swing it, my start, my end, my heart in my hand. You can have it right now if you want it. It's got your name on 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 it.
I've been thinking about you lately, reminiscing, going crazy. Miss the way your kiss would keep me up. Hey, wish that you were here tonight, drinking vodka soda, extra limes, and we could just get back to being us. 'Cause I just wanna be cool again, cool again, cool again, like we were last summer. Want you again, you again, you again, to be still in my covers, all tangled in each other nights, still playing back in my head. I just wanna be cool again, cool again, cool again, yeah. Do you ever think about the days we couldn't live without each other? Where the hell did we go wrong? Hey, how'd we go from that to this? How'd we let a good thing slip? Do we really have to go move on? I just wanna be cool again, cool again, cool again, like we were last summer. Want you again, you again, you again, to be still in my covers, all tangled in each other nights, still playing back in my head. I just wanna be cool again, cool again, cool again, yeah. Said I just wanna be cool again. Cool again, cool again. 'Cause I just wanna be cool again, cool again, cool again, like we were last summer. Want you again, you again, you again, to be still in my covers, all tangled in each other nights, still playing back in my head. I just wanna be cool again, cool again, cool again, yeah. Y'all know, yeah, I just wanna be cool again, like last summer with you. Cool again, cool again, cool again, cool again, cool again, yeah.
Driving through town, just my boy and me, with a Happy Meal in his booster seat.
We had 6 o'clock. You have 6 o'clock?
Mhm.
Okay. So officially 6 p.m. and we will call the school board meeting to session. Please stand for the national anthem. Starts with a banner.
Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance. Sorry, been out of the loop for a while.
You can sing if you want.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have, everybody's had their agenda. So if we have a motion for approval.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion made by Jennifer, second by Kathy for the approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Citizen comments. We have 2 requests for citizen comments tonight. The first from Tanya Clemens. And then, does Ms. Hanson want to step in for her? Sorry. I guess we'll move forward. The second comment for citizens' comments was of Donovan DePato. I guess we will continue to move forward. Fiscal stability, consent agenda. Everybody has sent the consent agenda. Any questions about the consent agenda? Discussion? Okay. Take a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Consent agenda, motion made by Jennifer, seconded by Kathy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Collaborative connections. We're talking about the gifts given to us from our community. Eric?
Yeah, sounds good. Once again, it's that time of the year where the fishing league is out in full force, as you can see by the first 3 donors. GSM Construction and Maintenance brought forward $1,000 to the Monticello fishing team. North Risk Partners, $500. Loop Tech, $500. And then we also have Peacemaker of Minnesota, a longstanding partner, $3,000 to Little Mountain as their peace guide. So these will all be used for a wonderful school district, and once again, we cannot thank our community enough for the great support of our kids and staff.
Awesome. I think we need a resolution.
Therefore, be it resolved by the Monticello School Board number 882 to gratefully accept the following donations. From GSM Construction and Maintenance, $1,000 for Monticello Fishing Team. From North Risk Partners, $500 for Monticello Fishing Team. From Lube Tech, $500 for Monticello Fishing. And from Peacemaker, Minnesota, $3,000 for the Little Mountain Elementary Peace Guide.
A second.
Seconded.
A resolution made by Jennifer for the acceptance of gifts, seconded by Jamie. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Is it possible to find out, maybe Eric, when you have your next school or superintendent meeting, how we compare to other districts in areas like this? I'd like to think we're reasonably high, but it'd be interesting to see how the districts compare in donations. So, awesome. Moving forward, innovation and leadership. Superintendent Eric Olson.
Right. Just wanted to bring a couple things forward. Know that I get to speak in a written form every week what's going around the district, and we're making reference of lots of grants coming in. Just thought it would be good for public communication of these while we do announce them to our families. I think it's important to have them all centered in one location here. So some of them are new, and I'll just kind of highlight the ones that are new and perhaps give a little explanation behind some of the ones that are a little bit more hard to understand. But, youth services training, $100,000. So a lot of these have been worked on at the community curriculum director and level. This is one of those, but just to have both staff and training for youth services, training in how we move forward with that program. Achievement integration, we've had that one for 3 years, so just a brief mention. CAP, we already brought forward with a presentation. Arts folks who brought that one forward a couple of meetings ago. Tutoring grant we received, and we are the beneficiaries of adding some positions in our district to help with some of our students who need help. That's $200,000. American Indian grant, we're on our 2nd year of that program. United Way to be a huge partner across all buildings. Center Care Foundation supports our SEL programming and specifically our bounce back social worker. Compare Rural Schools, just funding for being, I guess, considered in the rural state. Technology was one that we just announced our families, $459,000. That one's going to not only help with one device purchases, but it's also going to help offset some capital improvements that we're going to be able to go deeper and further with in order to get more tools into the hands of our staff members. And then Safe Routes to School. This is our 3rd year, I believe. We have our resident expert, Mr. Hackett, in the background there. But Mr. Hackett continues to work with the city in this collaborative project to make our roads around all of our schools more safe. This year, targeting an area around Pinewood, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Hackett, anything to add in that one?
Yes, just this event was going to generate as much fund as it had. Where it's going to go, that plan has given us the ability to apply structure grant and the city's a great partner and just making our that plan into work. For $500,000 and great improvements around the Pinewood area.
Awesome. Thanks for being a leader in that program. And is it the 3rd year of existence, if I'm not mistaken, or is it 4th? We were debating on that. Is it that long now? Wow. Sure. Okay. I think the very first one was a small project out here right around Little Mountain, Pinewood, so, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. All those grants, total over $1.6 million, so not only is our community good to us, but we're trying to find some other avenues to bring in revenue. Obviously, a lot of these grants are very focused times, and they don't allow you to just add staffing wherever we need it. But when you find the ones that meet our needs and apply for them, they do bring in, they do fill some of the gaps where there are needs. So we'll keep looking at these as a great way to solve some of our challenges in our district. We have applied for those other 4 grants, Grow Your Own grant, MTSS grant, Intro to Education, and expansion of rigorous course opportunities. And given any one of those all have some significant staffing additions. So we could be really doing the happy dance if any of those come forward. And I just wanted to also share a continuous improvement timeline. Shared this with some of our employee groups and really just want to get it back out in front of people. It's what we put into fruition the year that I got hired as superintendent, but we worked with a strategic planning committee around community event. Around 70 people come and be part of this event, and at this event we were able to identify some very specific priorities for the district, and that's where we really honed in on the continuous improvement circle and the 4 strategic priorities within that circle. And that was kind of the first step of not just having goals on the wall, static goals on the wall, but having goals be part of something that every staff member believes in. And as we move forward, you can see the red checks are all pieces of the puzzle that we have already put forth. So anytime you do strategic planning, what you're trying to do is you're trying to set your district on course to have more systems of support for people. And that's what we believe we've been doing. So the red checks are things that we have in progress and or have those systems ready to go. And even though we've been in a pandemic, I thought it was really important to tell the employee groups that while we didn't have this front and center for everyone to have extra pressures, we have been working as an administrative group really hard behind the scenes to further develop our systems of support. And we're not going to stop. We got to keep on course with our continuous growth, and part of that growth was to still build and work extra hard while the pandemic was going on, but yet take care of our staff and let them take care of their classrooms and not have them have extra pressures during that time. But moving forward, from now until the next year, we will be finalizing as many of the systems that we can, and these are systems that will help guide our students and staff and give us the extra supports that they need to be successful. So I just wanted to get this back in front of everybody here so that you can understand that not only drive what we do, but we will have links in here, active links to show what each one means, and we will go live with this by sometime this summer, so that this is really a tool that helps remind us where we are, what we're doing. When you go in other districts and see different improvement strategic planning processes, the ones I'm most impressed with are the ones that are active and not ones that kind of look like those old goals that I think we used to have that just are on walls. So I look forward to having this be a great tool for every staff member in the district to be able to use and to share where we are. One of the things that the district is working on right now, that middle portion of the circle, is every kid, every day, and that motto is awesome. I don't think it'll ever leave us, but we're really honing in on of a learner and what should every learner look like when they graduate from Monticello. And so that's what we're trying to clearly define right now. And so that's another piece of the puzzle that helps guide decisions that we all make every day. And then it helps hopefully get us all fueled with the passion we need to serve kids the way that we should be serving them. So here's our continuous improvement timeline.
Ask a question statement about the grants.
Yeah.
So obviously, we've made it a point of emphasis that we're continuing to pursue this to help us with financial issues. And Heidi's going to probably talk about also with the special ed co-op, how we've decided, or we're making an effort to hire a grant writer there, also a grant person that pursues grants. It's great that all these dollars are coming in, but we obviously have to track these dollars when they come in. Is that just something that Tina's adding to her plate, or is that, are we just saying, here's some more stuff since you don't have nothing to do? And how are we, I mean, I assume it's important for these grants to continue, that we're tracking them appropriately, using them appropriately. So is this something that we need to look at? I mean, if you continue to bring in grants Heidi, is that something that the grant writer would do, is track grants that they write and receive? Is that part of our job description for them? Okay.
Could monitor, kind of timeline for spending grants, but they have to finance office to ensure that everything is on track, things correctly.
I mean, what if you get to a point where you're taking $5-6 million worth of grants, and that's a lot of dollars that you're trying to track, use appropriately?
There's no doubt what you're saying is being a burden on all areas of our district. I mean, we've employed teams across the district, but there's burden on our district office folks, especially 18. And I would say Barb and Cindy, some pieces of the puzzle too, so.
In these specific grants, are you able to use some of these dollars to help hire a person to track grant dollars, or how does it work?
I would say,
Or everyone's different, I suppose they have certain
Yeah.
criteria, how are you gonna use that
Yeah.
grant in?
Some of the grants, I can't speak to all the ones that the district has applied for. Some grants allow you to allocate some of the grant to offset operational costs. So somebody to help supervise the grant, request from that team. What requested was a partial FTE to help see implement TSS, just to help with some of those operational costs as well. So some grants you can include some budget line, those costs, but it really depends on the grant.
I just think it's something we have to we can't lose sight of.
it's a great question.
If it's additional stuff on Barb and Tina's plate or you guys' plates, then I think we need to make sure we're evaluating that. And even if you have specific dollars, like Heidi said, to offset something, it doesn't mean it doesn't give you more hours in the day. It's just changing dollars. So I think it's important that we have to continue to watch that.
For sure.
Okay.
Point well taken and understood.
It's all yours, Heidi.
Oh, you stand at the podium, absolutely.
Goodness. Hitting the mic. So good evening, everybody. I'm Heidi Nissler. I know I've been working with some of you over the last few months. I am the Director of Special Education here in Monticello, but I'm also the Special Education overarching for the Sherburne and Northern Right Special Ed Co-op, which serves Monticello, but then also serves the districts of Becker and Big Lake. So I'm here to speak to all three of you, or all four of you tonight. So a few topics that I hope to cover tonight. The first is, who we are. What is the co-op? Who are the different people that work within the co-op? And what do we do? What kind of services does the co-op provide to Monticello to support all of our students? Funding, as we know, there's funding pieces that come with special education. I'll share just some high-level pieces about the funding for the co-op and then special education as well. And then just some next steps, as Board Chair Hegle alluded to, the co-op is looking to grow and expand and continue to collaborate to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our districts. And it's been really exciting to have some of those conversations this year. So the first part, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are at the co-op. So as I said, together we are the Sherburne and Northern Right Special Ed Cooperative. One thing that you might not know is the co-op is a separate school district. So we have a school district number 6090-52, similar to how Monticello is District 882. The co-op has a district number and was reported to the Minnesota Department of Education as a separate school district. So we do have some co-op programs where students are truly students of a co-op program, so different than Monticello, but all of our co-op programs are located here in Monticello. So we work really closely with all the building leaders here. So as of July 1st this last summer, our co-op consists of 3 member districts, Becker, Big Lake, and Monticello. Up until last year, there was a 4th member district, St. Michael Albertville, but given the size, they had grown so much, they decided to withdraw and be independent. So we now have 3 member districts that are in our co-op, and it's been kind of an exciting year. We've had some really great discussion and ideas of where we can be moving to continue to grow as we look forward. So just some key numbers, just to give you an idea of how big our co-op is. If you add all of the students across the 3 districts, we have 9,869 students. So that's the students in Becker, Big Lake, and Monticello. If we were to be one school district, we would be within the top 15 to 20 school districts in size in the state of Minnesota. Together, the 3 districts have over 1,800 students who receive special ed services, and that represents about a little over 17% of the students in our districts.
I could just, I'm going to interject one thing, Heidi. Those numbers right there are exactly the reason why we chose to try go for a grant writing position. Because as individual districts, you might not qualify for some of the grants that are looking for larger numbers, whether it be free and reduced lunch, support education. Collaborating could help us go a lot further than we've ever been able to go. So.
Yeah, the state average is a little over 14% for students that receive special ed services. And Monticello alone has, about 4,000 students total, and over 600 receive special ed services. So Monticello is our biggest district within the co-op and has the most students who receive special ed services. But really, together with the two other districts, we're a pretty powerful cooperative. We're one of the bigger ones in the state, even after STMA has withdrawn. I think it's also important to know a little bit about why be part of a cooperative. What are the advantages? I think one of the biggest advantages to a district like Monticello is the financial savings. There are a lot of services that need to be provided to students. There's a lot of specialized types of programs that we need to have in place, and those are all really expensive services and really expensive programs. And by partnering with other school districts, we are able to allocate resources and be more efficient and effective with some of our funding or with some of our staffing. That it may be that if Monticello only needs 0.6 FTE of a teacher for students who are deaf and hard of hearing, if we were on our own, we would have to hire a 1.0, but it may be that we can hire somebody through the co-op that is 0.6 Monticello, 0.4 Becker, and then we're able to share some of those costs. And we have a similar kind of mindset with some of our student programming, that we might need a specialized program, and we have quite a few specialized programs here that are physically located in Monticello but are operated through the co-op, where we might have 9 or 10 students in the program, but 3 or 4 maybe from Monticello, 2 or 3 from Becker, 3 from Big Lake. And so we're able to be a lot more efficient with our staffing and our programming, because we wouldn't want to have a program with just 3 or 4 students, but we are able to be efficient and group students together with similar needs and be able to cover those within the co-op structure. Another benefit of the co-op is that there are certain licenses and types of positions that we're required to offer. And again, instead of 3 districts each having to have all of these different services, we're able to offer them through the co-op, and we can share them across the 3. There's other benefits too. I won't read through every single one of them, but I think one thing that is really important and exciting is that we've really identified that this structure of a cooperative works very well for special education, and through the visioning and kind of outside the box thinking of our 3 superintendents, we're starting to look at, are there other ways that we can be collaborative within this cooperative to find ways to work together outside of special education as well. So I kind of feel like that's kind of the next step of where we're going with the co-op, that we're seeing that we can be a lot more efficient and fiscally responsible with some of the programming and services we offer. And so we're looking at some other opportunities beyond special ed as well. Because it's a separate school district, we do have to have a governance model in place. The governance for the co-op looks a little different than it does for any of our member districts. So one piece of the governance model is a superintendent advisory council. So Superintendent Olson is part of our 3-person superintendent advisory council. Right now, I meet about once a month with the superintendents, and we talk about all things special education, but we also do a lot of discussing and collaborating about other district needs as well. And they review all of the agenda items before they go to the governing board. The co-op has its own governing board that operates somewhat similarly to this school board. One school board member from each of our member districts serves on this governing board. Board Chair Hegle sits on the governing board for the co-op, so he represents Monticello. And thank you again for being willing to serve 1 more year. And right now, we're kind of meeting about every other month during the school year. And really, the governing board provides that final approval for our budget, for any staffing changes. So they really are the final approvers, as are all of you, for those district operations. tell you a little bit. Any questions about any of those pieces before I jump into a little bit about what the co-op, what services the co-op currently provides?
I have one question when it comes to funding from the state. So you were explaining before how the co-op is great because, you know, we might get 0.6, 0.4 here so we can employ someone. But do we find people that are in specialized areas like that, are they stretched then too thin?
Throughout the school year, we do a caseload analysis and a workload analysis to make sure that we are being balanced with what their workloads are. And so for most of the positions we have enough student need to have multiple people with the same license. And so we'll have our initial projections and placements at the beginning of the year. Like right now, I'm working on all my projections and my budget for the next school year. And from year to year, there are times that I request additional staff based on student numbers across the 3 districts. And there's times that there's student needs decreasing. And so we're always adapting and adjusting. And then we have different points throughout the school year where we are reviewing those same workloads. And there may be times that we have to shift a little bit more support to Monticello or shift a little bit more support to Becker. What we found is that sometimes students kind of move between the 3 districts, or a student may be in Big Lake, but then is referred to one of our specialized co-op programs. And so we might need to just shift where that support is. But by having all these services through the co-op, we can really adjust a lot more easily throughout the school year as well.
Thank you.
So really, what we do here at the co-op is supervise and ensure that all of the special education needs are met for all of the students here in Monticello and the other 3 school districts. We support our building principals, our building staff, even before a student is referred for special education, that we have staff members that work with our building principals, like our school psychologists, to be identifying pre-referral interventions, what are some supports we can put into place before we do the testing to see if a student qualifies for special education. The special ed teams also make sure that that we're trying to identify students who have disabilities. That's our obligation as a district. So we make sure that we are up to date on all of the testing materials that we need to be implementing. Then we also make sure that we follow all the requirements for paperwork. I spend a lot of time on paperwork, oversee all of the staffing, doing all the evaluations in collaboration with our building principals. We are really involved if we have any dispute resolution that we need to do with families or parents. We work with the state. We work with parent advocacy organizations. I do a lot with special education finance. I sit on a few different committees at the state level. I also am really involved with advocacy. Again, I'm really involved with some professional organizations advocating at the state level for what is in the best interest of students, most importantly, but then also advocating for what is going to be most supportive to our staff and our communities and our district as a whole. So really from birth to 21, anything that involves special education, the co-op supports Monticello students and families. And really, I hit this a little bit, I won't read it quick, but a lot of what we do is really based on making sure that every student has an equitable opportunity to be successful in our school. There's a lot of legal requirements, but ultimately our goal is to make sure that every student has that free and appropriate public education. That is quoted in here. This is a quote from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act from 1975, and this was really the beginning of special education in the United States. And even today, a lot goes back to some of this original language in the bill that was passed in 1975. And ultimately what we are trying to do really aligns with what the mission is here in Monticello. We are trying to make sure that every student has the skills they need, not just to be successful in school, but the last word for when they have that diploma, when they are done with school, that they are able to be gainfully employed, that they're able to be successful in the community and really able to live that fulfilling adult life. That's our ultimate goal. So specifically within the co-op, there are some special services that the co-op provides and some special programs. So as far as services, all special education administration goes through the co-op. So I'm the director, I'm kind of the the buck stops here person if decisions need to be made, but I also have an amazing team of leaders, of administrators that support here in Monticello and in the other member districts, really getting in and supporting day to day, partnering with our administrators, working with our teachers and our paraprofessionals and our parents. We have a really great leadership team here. We also have a tremendous amount of staff that provides support as well. School psychologists, DHH teachers, we have an audiologist, we provide ASL interpreters. We do a lot with assistive technology. Technology has been exploding, and we continue to find ways that technology can help all students, especially our students with disabilities. We also have early childhood special education programs. You might not know, but we actually, here in Monticello, we have a birth to 3 early intervention program that goes into homes and does home visits. So this entire year, we've been working really hard to make sure that we are doing that in a safe and supportive way for our families and for our staff as well. But we get referrals for babies as young as a couple days old if they were born or identified in the hospital as having some sort of developmental delay. They can be referred to the school district, and we have staff that go out and do home visits, not necessarily working directly with the student, but working with families, with daycare providers, with caregivers to help them learn how they can support their child's development. That's our Birth to 3 early intervention program. It's amazing, but I think it's a service that a lot of our community doesn't know is out there, but it's one of the most amazing programs that I'm proud that we are able to offer. We also offer some really intensive programs for students that have more significant needs that really need a small setting. And another really neat program that we offer that we're required to have is 18 to 21-year-old program. So students who have finished that 12th grade year, they've finished their senior year, but they still have some needs related to their disability. They're able to attend an 18 to 21-year-old transition program to really work on some of those adult living skills out in the community, getting jobs, practicing, going on different community-based outings. And it's absolutely a highlight of our co-op. We have people from other districts reaching out and wanting to learn how we do the amazing things that we do in our transition program. It's a huge asset to the district, and it's very highly regarded in this region. So the legal basis for special education, ultimately everything kind of funnels from the federal government. In 1975 was the first law, IDEA, and the federal government, those federal regulations still establish those minimum requirements, and then the state adds additional state statute. There are quite a few areas in which Minnesota requires more, has a higher standard than what the federal government has. And so that is something that often ends up in the courts, and we often end up with case law as well. And so a big part of my job is knowing what those federal requirements are, what those state statutes are, what is it saying in case law, because one of my biggest responsibilities is protecting the district, protecting the rights of our students, but then also, if I know where that line is, I'm really able to advocate for students within what the law has established as well. We want to be doing what's best for kids, and all of those laws exist because at some point the rights of those students weren't being followed. And so we try really hard to make sure that we are adhering to all of our legal requirements. Any questions about what we do? I'm sure everybody's excited to talk about special ed funding. I'm shocked that the room is not full. So, yes, I can talk a little bit about special ed funding. I'm a little bit of a finance geek. I love special ed funding. Most people don't, but I'll share a little bit about what I do know, and please don't hesitate to stop and ask questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the co-op as an organization, as a separate district, just because I want to make sure that it's really transparent with our member district boards how the co-op is funded, because this is information that Tina takes and includes in the district budget that she presents to you as well. The co-op receives a variety of different types of funding. One type of funding that we receive is federal grants. So the federal government does every year allocate funds to the member districts. The member district funds come through the co-op. That is just how it's set up through the through the Minnesota Department of Education. So some of the federal funds are spent through the co-op for administration, and then the funds that aren't spent through the co-op go back to the member district. So every year Monticello does receive some federal funds that really Tina helps budget out how Monticello is going to be using those. The co-op also receives state special education aid, and this is where people start to their eyes fog over because the state special education funding formula is incredibly complex, and every time they update the funding formula, they make it more complex. And the state special ed aid does not cover all of the expenditures. The state special ed aid usually covers about 56% of what the district pays for an expenditure. The co-op also receives compensatory aid, similar to how Monticello is eligible for compensatory aid. The co-op does receive some compensatory aid for students who are eligible for free and reduced programming. A big part of what we've been working towards the last couple of years is increasing our third-party billing revenue. So some students receive services that are medical type services. So speech language therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, PCA, personal care assistance. And there are some of those services that are eligible to bill medical assistance. So we never bill a child's private health insurance, but the state actually requires districts to bill medical assistance, and you can receive about 50% reimbursement there. And so that is a source of revenue that we've really been prioritizing the last couple of years. So we bill that for the co-op, but we also do that for Monticello as well. So that's a service that we have tried really hard to be improving the last few years. Access fees are another source of revenue. And I mention this just because one benefit of being in a co-op is access to programming, but sometimes students will open enroll from other districts that aren't members of our co-op. And just to make sure that it is fair for our member districts, if a student open enrolls from a district outside of our co-op, that district has to pay an access fee to help offset the cost of the program. And then, one thing that's different from the co-op than our member districts, and this is where I work really closely with Tina, is that at the end of the year for the co-op, at the end of our fiscal year, the co-op will always have a budget that breaks even. The co-op doesn't make money, but we also aren't allowed to go into debt. That's just the structure of a co-op. So at the end of the year, there's always going to be a balance due. That doesn't mean that we weren't budgeting appropriately, but just at the end of the year, any additional costs that weren't covered get split between the three member districts based on the size of the member district. And that is something that Tina builds into her budget, and we are very mindful of what that amount is.
I have two questions. The first is about the third-party billing.
Yeah.
Can you just clarify, so a student who has private medical insurance and receives a covered service such as PT or OT, the district does not bill their private insurance to cover that. They bill medical assistance on behalf of that child to reimburse those services in the special education cooperative?
Correct. So we do not bill private health insurance because we would never bill for any service that would increase anything for the family. We don't want a family to have an increased deductible or have to pay any out-of-cost services. But medical assistance, if we bill medical assistance, because it's a public health option, there is no cost to the family. And so we only bill medical assistance for students who receive MA and if they have an eligible service at school.
So if a student has private insurance, you don't bill on
Do not bill.
at all?
Some students will have private insurance and MA, but we would not bill the private insurance, we would just bill medical assistance. So families would never have increased premiums, they would never have,
Increased services,
correct,
not as many visits or something.
correct.
I also have a question about the access fees. Who sets those? Are they set by statute? Are they set by the districts? Who sets the fee?
There is not much in statute about access fees, and so the state doesn't set what the access fees are. There are really large intermediate districts in the Twin Cities Metro, and the state has done a little bit of work with them to try to set a maximum for what they can charge for their access fees. But, so the access fees, I work with the business managers to talk about what those access fees would be. And it's really calculating some of the unreimbursed costs that we would have through the co-op. And so I think it ended up, it's a per day amount that the non-member district would pay.
So does that affect the special education cross subsidy in the losing district or in the gaining district in any way?
It usually ends up being a little bit of a wash because most districts are part of either a co-op or an intermediate district. So we have students from Monticello that if it's a Monticello resident and they open enroll to Osseo, and Osseo is part of a different cooperative or intermediate district, Monticello would have an access fee for that student. So there's always students that are enrolling from other districts. It protects us from having a higher cross subsidy. So that by having an access fee, it protects our districts a little bit from having a higher unreimbursed cost.
And could you just estimate how many students are open enrolled from other districts that are in the special education cooperative?
In the co-op, we do not have many. So in the co-op, we have about 180 students, and I would guess that less than 15 are open enrolled. So it's not a large number because we really try to make sure our programs are focused on the students who are residents of our district. So it is what most of the students who are open enrolled are students who had lived here, who then moved and then still want to stay here.
Thank you very much.
You can go to the next slide. And so the co-op in Monticello, their special ed funding is a little bit different. The Monticello special education does not have quite as many sources of revenue as the co-op does. So Monticello really has the three sources of special ed aid. There are the federal grants that flow through the cooperative. There is the state special education aid that covers about 56% of the costs from the state. And then there's the third-party billing that I was mentioning earlier. So if a student is enrolled in Monticello and receives speech services and that student also receives medical assistance, we are required by the state to bill MA for that service. One thing I should mention too is that we do get, that there is parental consent for that as well. So we are making sure that parents are aware of that. And then the cross subsidy, which I imagine you may have heard of before, are really whatever the costs are for providing special ed services that aren't covered by the special education aid. The aid that we receive from all of these funding sources is not enough to cover the cost of special education, and so that amount is referred to as the cross subsidy. And fully funding the cross subsidy is one of the biggest legislative priorities of most of our educational associations that I'm a part of, that Superintendent Olson is a part of. I know that the Minnesota School Board Association has also been advocating for increased funding for the cross subsidy as well. So even though the cross subsidy is a very real issue for a lot of our districts, it is a very, very high priority, especially in this current legislative session, to address.
Is it $4 million? Yeah, so we use $4 million to help, educate students with special education, and in order to do so, we had to $4 million from the general budget. So
And that's ours, not including Big Lake and Becker?
Yep.
just ours.
Yeah, that's just,
And it's not like, obviously we need those services. Because who would be without the right staff to work all of our students, but the point is, like, this was a federal mandate that was always, throughout the course of history, 1975 was supposed to be funded.
It was never intended to be the burden of local districts to fund special education, but when the federal government didn't fund it and then the state government didn't fund it, it has fallen to our local communities to fund special education.
I have an additional question, backing up to the issue about billing, the insurance. Can you estimate how much revenue might be lost because we're not billing for some medical services because the students have private insurance? Is that a large group of students or not a very large group of students?
Right now, we bring in, do you remember how much Monticello had for third party? Yeah, it's over $100,000 that we bring in just for Monticello. The co-op brings in even more for third-party
MA,
billing.
through MA.
Just through MA. We're really not able to bill private health insurance.
Do we know what the loss is, though, is my question, is do we know what, how many kids that we're not able to bill for because they have private insurance? It would be nice to be able to put a value on that, especially if we're talking to legislators.
I don't have that number. I can look into that. One similar thought that I have is one service that we are not able to bill for right now is social work services. In almost every other state, districts are allowed to bill for social work services. However, in the state of Minnesota, the Department of Human Services, I think it's DHS, that oversees the third-party billing, they require districts to have a very complex children's therapeutic services and supports. It's CTSS. Districts are required to have a very complex and rigorous set of requirements in place in order to bill for social work services. No other state has these same types of requirements, and it's almost next to impossible for a district to meet the requirements to bill for social work services. So across the state last year, there are estimates that we lost $10 million in MA revenue simply because the state of Minnesota has made it so difficult to bill for social work services, and districts just truly are not able to adhere to the licensing requirements and just some of the other diagnostic requirements that are in place. I think there are less than 5 districts in the state of Minnesota who are able to bill for social work services because of how strict the regulations are. So that is another big legislative priority, because that would bring in additional revenue for our districts, and the money is there. You know, the medical assistance is there. It's the state of Minnesota, and it's not even the legislature. It is how DHS is interpreting different rule, and they've been refusing to make changes. And so we're trying to advocate legislatively so we can access that source of revenue. Yeah, $10 million across the state of Minnesota that they estimate is not being accessed every year just because DHS has made it so difficult to bill for social work services.
Is there any avenues for cost sharing with public health resources or anything for that?
Not really for social work services.
Thank you.
And then I'll just share a little bit about where we're going, which is kind of exciting. So one near or close step within the next couple of months is we have been working on getting an updated logo for our co-op. Previously, when St. Michael Albertville was in the co-op, we had the logo on the left, and I've been working with a staff member at Eastview who does some graphic design work, and we are close to finalizing a new logo, and it'll be presented to our governing board in April. And what you might not know about the colors is the colors are from the 3-member districts. So the tealish color is from Becker, the dark blue and the gold are the colors from Big Lake, and the red is from Monticello. So, and the waves represent the river, because all of our districts are located right along the river. That's what kind of ties us together. So there's a sneak peek at the logo that's not officially approved yet, but I was too excited to keep it in. So Jeff, you get a sneak peek. And then really, as we go to the future, we're really talking about collaboration. As I said, that the superintendents have had some really great conversations about what are some additional ways that we can collaborate and work together to be more efficient, operate more efficiently, but then also be able to hopefully offer some really cool programming as we get into the future that a single district might not be able to do on their own. But if we were to partner with our 3 districts, are there some really neat opportunities and that we'd be able to access? The first partnership going outside special education is the grant writer that Board Chair Hegle hinted at. The co-op has a posting out right now for a shared grant writer that would be shared between the 3 districts. And this person would research, find, help our districts apply for different grants, really focusing in on those competitive grants, either for individual member districts or, depending on the grant, possibly some collective grant opportunities. Because when you, like I said, when you combine our 3 districts, we have almost 10,000 students, that there may be some grants that by going together we would be eligible for or have a higher priority. And so it's something new. This is the first time we're looking at something outside of special education. But again, our goal at the co-op, my goal, is to always be responsive and changing and adapting to what our member districts need. And the grant writing is a really exciting opportunity. I've had the opportunity to work on a few grants already this spring, and it's a lot of work. But if we have somebody that is able to really focus on this, I think we'll be a lot more, it'll go a lot faster. And with somebody who has the technical writing that they'd be looking for, I think it's really exciting to think of what we could do with this position. And then the other thing that we'll be starting this summer going into next fall is some strategic planning. So kind of taking the grant writer position and running and really looking at student programming and achievement, definitely focusing in on our students with disabilities, but we're here for all students as well. What is good for students with disabilities is generally good for all students. So what can we be supporting in our districts to be supporting all of our students? Looking at our organizational supports and services, the grant writer is the first new service that we're offering, but are there different types of supports or services that we need to be offering? And then really partnering with our districts to be furthering everything that our districts are doing to be establishing safe and welcoming environments for our students, but then also for our staff. That we are really trying to partner to make sure that all of our staff are being supported. Right now we have some amazing staff and we want to do what we can to support them. That's all I had. I have my contact information on here. My office is just down the hallway, close to Superintendent Olson's. Any final questions? Sorry, I took a little bit longer than I was anticipating. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Safety and healthy culture. Barb?
Well, I'm going to do a COVID update, and hopefully going forward, you'll see less and less of me doing COVID updates. I can turn my attention to other things. But we just want to share a couple of updates with you that have happened since the last board meeting. And if you watch our COVID dashboard, you'll notice that our cases are continue to stay very low in the district and in the community. So that's good news. That we continue to report. We're still required to report positive cases. Staff and students, we still monitor all of that. We're just seeing less incidents right now, which is good news. We updated our safety plan in March, and there were a few changes to that, and some restrictions were lifted so that we're just trying to keep pace with the changes that MDE is recommending across the state and what we're seeing in other school districts as well. As you know, no masks are required on school buses any longer. So that's a change that is just helping us take those steps forward to, if we're truly moving into the next phase of the pandemic, you know, what is it going to look like going forward? And it's just good to see these signs that we are continuing to move forward. Volunteers are now allowed in all of our buildings, and we started kind of energizing this in early March. And so there's new links on our website where people that want to volunteer can go in and do a new background check, complete annual training, whatever they need to do, and then we're ready to get some parent volunteers back in our buildings. We're really excited about that. Oh, that's just a repeat. You can see the links are active on this page. So can you go to the next page? Do you have another page? Okay, let me get my notes. I know I have a couple more updates here. Optional COVID testing. We have been doing that all year, about every other week, all year long. And we are discontinuing that. We have very few staff members that continue to take part in that. We also have kind of a new resource for staff. So any staff that is experiencing symptoms, COVID-like symptoms, can get a free at-home test from the nurse's office. So this way, the screening can kind of take place a little bit on a as-needed basis. So we won't be doing scheduled optional tests any longer in our buildings. There's still some places across the community where you can get optional testing, so we'll just continue to communicate those sites and keep people informed. MDE has determined that we do not have to require proof of vaccination any longer for programs that work with MDE projects. That is the pyramid model in EEC. That's about half of the staff that we are doing weekly testing or requiring proof of vaccination for at EEC. So that's reducing 10 to 15 staff, kind of freeing them from that requirement. Unfortunately, Head Start still has to follow the federal guidelines, which haven't changed yet. We're hoping and watching, and we'll keep people updated when that happens, but we are still required to test staff working in any federally funded program. So all around, making progress, good news, advancing forward and keeping an eye on everything, and we'll continue to do so. Any questions? Good. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Rosen, policies?
All right, tonight we are bringing forth the following policies for first reading. I will lump them into two groups. Policy 211, 414, I'll name them criminal or civil action, policy 211. 414, mandated reporting of child neglect. Policy 423, employee-student relations. Policy 519, interviews of students by outside agencies. And policy 532, use of peace officers on crisis teams. These policies came to us from MSBA due to the Minnesota legislator reorganizing the Treatment of Minors Act by moving it to from a criminal law chapter to a public health chapter. That change is reflected in these policy updates from MSBA. And then, so that's that group. They all came because of that reorganizing of the Maltreatment Minors Act. Policy 206 is, we're bringing forth this policy after first reading, and the change that we are making to this policy that we would move forward requiring only names and topics of discussion from citizens that sign up to speak at school board meetings. And that information will be reflected and then retained and published in board meeting minutes after. So right now, we currently also have them put their address. So that would be one piece of information that we could delete and move forward with this change. We still feel it gives families opportunities and have clear directions and a video online to teach families how to be part of the school board at citizens comment level. So the committee has had an opportunity to work through all of these policies and recommended changes. And tonight I bring forward this this group of policies here for.
Awesome. Any questions?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I just want to make it a comment that we worked really hard on a lot of these and a lot of behind-the-scenes work, checking. I know Clay, I think I can use his name, really went above and beyond to look at some of the really detailed wording and collaborate with the Minnesota School Boards Association, and also looking at some of the new legislation that's moving through. We've just had a lot of discussion, so it looks like a really simple thing that we're just bringing these forward and approving them, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone that participated in that and make it clear to anybody that's watching that there was a lot more behind the scenes than you might know about for all of these policies.
We're very lucky. We have 3 people who love to dive into policy and as board members, and they dive in with a critical lens and preparation, both before and after the meetings. And I think that'll serve our district really, really well, and all parents and families. And I mean, really we should celebrate that, because it's policy is a arduous and very detailed oriented task, and I'm really proud of the things that we've been able to bring forward to the policy themselves, but bring forward to the district improvement areas.
Bless your heart.
Jeff,
He
likes budget better. Yeah.
That was very polite.
If this is a first reading, do we need an action item? So we don't need an action? Okay. So we can make sure that these are open for review, and then we'll, if any questions come up for second reading, we have an action.
Give them back to either policy members or myself or Barb Wilson, and we'll bring our Clay, and we'll bring forward to the next policy meeting.
With that, we are complete. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded?
Motion to adjourn made by Jennifer, second by Kathy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:04.